Knez Vladimir, known for his hostility towards Christianity, gave the order to destroy all idols in his cities in the spring of 988. Under the leadership of priests, he sent his people to be baptized in the Dnieper River, and the decision was made. Russia, with all its people and nobles, would become Christian. Vladimir was determined in the path he had chosen for his country and did not want any remnants of pagan religions to persist on his lands. However, it was known that in the early years of Vladimir's life, he had been hostile to Christianity and supported pagan beliefs. To understand the meaning of this radical change for the people living in the icy lands and why Christianity was chosen when there were other beliefs such as Islam and Judaism, we need to look at the story of a warrior father who lived in the 10th century and his 3 sons who shared the country after his death. Sviatoslav, a prominent leader, was murdered by his father Igor at a young age. His mother Olga sought revenge to prevent the dissolution of the Russian state and ensure her son's healthy growth to ascend the throne. Sviatoslav's childhood years were marked by a power struggle driven by revenge, and these struggles left lasting traces throughout his life. Despite his mother Olga being known for her wisdom and being a Christian, Sviatoslav never embraced Christianity. In his time, although some churches survived in Russian territories, the dominant belief was paganism. There were Christians among the people and nobles, but Christianity was definitely not allowed to prevail over pagan beliefs. Even among the warriors who participated in wars, there were Christians, but Sviatoslav and many of his noble companions openly embraced pagan beliefs. Sviatoslav stated that he had no desire or thought for his people to collectively convert to Christianity. However, when Sviatoslav was killed in a Pecheneg raid in 972 BC, the Russian state was left without a leader. Sviatoslav's 3 sons began to rule the Russian state by dividing the territories among themselves. The eldest son Iropok controlled the richer lands. Yaroslav, who was married to a Christian wife with a Christian mother, had a positive view of Christianity. The second son Oleg controlled the Brevliany lands, strategically important for uniting the north and south. However, there was competition between Svenold, the former guardian leader of Sviatoslav, and Oleg. Svenold had long wanted to control the Drevlian lands and had recently initiated efforts in this regard, gaining the friendship of Yaroslav. Oleg was experiencing conflicts of interest between Yaropok and Svenold, and this tension turned into a war as a result of a hunting accident. Svenold was killed in opposition to the united Oleg and Yaropok, both Christians, triggering serious tension among the 3 brothers and leading to a war. Vladimir, who bore the most resemblance to his father among the 3 sons, controlled the north in Niger and managed the surrounding lands. Vladimir, like his father, was a fierce warrior and did not favor the spread of Christianity. During his reign, the spread of Christianity in the southern territories was a development Vladimir did not appreciate. Oleg died in a hunting accident as a result of the conflict between Yaropok and Svenold. Oleg's death further escalated the tension among the 3 brothers and eventually turned into a war. This war concluded in 1015 with Vladimir's victory, making him the sole ruler of the Russian state. Meanwhile, Alex, who had gone hunting on his own land, was accidentally killed. The circumstances of this event are highly debated, and it is not possible to know for certain whether the events that day on Oleg's land were genuinely an accident. However, it can be asserted that the events of that day certainly changed Russian history. After this incident, Svenold insisted on seeking revenge for Yaropok. Although Yaropok did not want to draw his sword against his own brother, there was a situation that needed intervention. If Svenold's desire for revenge remained unanswered, it could lead to a rebellion. Yaropok, not wanting turmoil in his lands, assembled his Hierophant army and marched against Oleg. Oleg died during the Battle of Ovach in 976. Thus, the Grevelian lands under his control fell under Yaropok's rule. While these events unfolded, Vladimir in the north was anxiously monitoring the developments. He saw the murder of his brother and the seizure of his lands as a threat to himself. Therefore, he returned from the secure place where he had left and where his overseas relatives, including King Haakon of Norway, were. Christianity began to spread in Russia under his rule. However, the reign of the Christian-friendly Yarapok would not last long. Vladimir, who had fled to Scandinavia, returned to Novgorod in 978 with Viking warriors gathered around him. His first goal was to capture Polotsk, located on the route to the south. Overcoming obstacles one by one in the north, he continued to move southward. Yarapok did not know what to do. He could challenge Vladimir on the battlefield, but the strength of the northerners in his brother's army made this option too risky. After a brief moment of indecision, Yarapok decided that the best option was to initiate peace talks with Vladimir. Fearing for his life, Yarapok chose to begin negotiations with Vladimir, who had no protection during one of these meetings, and was ultimately killed by the warriors in his brother's army. With Yarapok's death, there was no longer any obstacle in Vladimir's path. In 978, he seized Kiev with his Viking companions. Vladimir, now the sole ruler of Russian territories, faced new challenges even as one problem was resolved. Gaining control with the help of Norwegian pagan warriors had put him in a difficult situation, relying too much on his Nordic allies. While Vladimir did not particularly like Christians, he did not want to cause a religious civil war by applying excessive pressure on them. The majority of Norwegian Vikings, however, hated Christianity and tried to encourage and exert pressure on Vladimir to initiate practices that would put him in a difficult position. Moreover, their excessive and rough behavior disturbed the city's residents. Vladimir experienced great difficulties due to the warriors he had brought from Scandinavia. Besides the religious disputes within his borders, there was also an international dimension to the issue. The surrounding lands of the Russian state had gradually become Christian one by one. The Russians, who insisted on paganism instead of choosing one of the Abrahamic religions, found themselves isolated on the international stage. The moves Vladimir would make against people of different religions living in his own country were of great importance, especially due to his relations with two states. One of these states was the Volga-Bulgaria Khanate. Volga Bulgars, who sometimes fought with Russians and sometimes engaged in trade, had a close relationship with Vladimir's people and state. Volga Bulgars were Muslims, and Vladimir could establish a potentially beneficial alliance by converting to Islam. Additionally, if Vladimir became a Muslim, he could secure the support of the caliphate. According to the tale of past years, a Russian chronicle, the Volga Bulgars sent a delegation to Vladimir inviting him to accept Islam. However, Vladimir listened to the delegation's words but did not accept the invitation to Islam. There were various reasons behind this decision. One of the main reasons was that Muslims were a minority in Russian territories during Vladimir's time. Paganism and Christianity had gained a certain power in Kiev and its surroundings during Vladimir's era, but Muslims did not have such a population and influence in Russian territories. Furthermore, some sources mention another detail that influenced Vladimir's decision. This detail was related to the eating and drinking habits of the Russians. According to this theory, knowing that his people liked to drink alcohol, Vladimir did not want to switch to a religion that would ban it. Russian historian Lev Gumilev partly supports this theory. According to him, Vladimir wanted alcohol to be freely available, especially because he knew about the attachment of the nobility to the traditions related to alcohol. Also, the prohibition of pork consumption in Islam was decisive for Vladimir, because in the 10th century Russia, pigs were one of the most widely raised animals. However, there is another view that argues that this issue was not very important. According to this view, the decision Vladimir had to make was a matter of life and death for the Russian state on the international stage. Vladimir taking the drinking culture of the people so seriously in such a serious matter was unlikely. Thus, Vladimir turned to other options. The second option before him was Judaism, but being Jewish in the 10th century world where Vladimir ruled was seen as a weakness on the international stage. Moreover, Judaism had a bad memory among the Russians, who had fought against the Jewish Khazar Khaganate for many years. After consultations with the Jews, Vladimir did not want himself or his people to be Jewish. The third option was Christianity, especially the Christianity that the Russians, especially through their relations with the Byzantine Empire, had become familiar with over the years. The relations with the Byzantine Empire had been crucial for the Russians since the early days of the establishment of the Kiev Rus. Although his father Sviatoslav had fought against Byzantium before, Vladimir was aware of the long-term benefits that gaining the favor of the empire could bring to his state. Therefore, he began to look more favorably towards Christianity. However, he had not yet decided exactly what to do. At this very moment, the turmoil in the territories of the Byzantine Empire presented him with a new opportunity. Rebellions had begun to break out in the lands of the young Emperor Basil in Anatolia. The emperor sought help from his northern neighbor, Russia. According to their agreement, Vladimir would assist the emperor with his Scandinavian warriors. In return, the emperor would make a substantial payment and give his sister Anna to Vladimir as a wife. However, Basil had one condition. For the agreement to be valid, Vladimir had to be baptized and become a Christian. Marrying the daughter of an imperial family was a significant opportunity for Vladimir. He accepted this proposal and, consequently, Christianity in February of 988. He was baptized and took the name Vasilius in honor of the emperor. As promised to the emperor, he also sent Viking warriors to Constantinople. The estimated number of these warriors was around 6,000. By sending the Norsemen away from his own lands, he rid himself of the disturbances they caused. The Vikings enjoyed fighting and collecting spoils of war, so by following Vladimir's orders, they went to Constantinople and began to fight alongside the emperor. Everyone benefited from this arrangement. Vladimir, the Vikings, and the emperor all gained from this agreement. The Viking warriors sent by Vladimir later became known as the Varangian Guard and continued to stay at the Byzantine palace as the emperor's personal guards. Emperor Vasilius, with the help of Vladimir's warriors, managed to suppress the uprisings in Anatolia. He was now secure, but as he began to feel safe, he started to avoid sending his sister Anna to Vladimir as his bride. Vasilius no longer needed Vladimir. Furthermore, it was not well received for women from the imperial family to marry foreigners. Vasilius feared earning the hatred of his people by breaking this tradition. Another unfulfilled promise by the emperor was related to the independence of the Russian Church. Vladimir had converted to Christianity with the guarantee that the Russian Church would be independent and that Byzantium would not interfere in its affairs. However, the Church in Constantinople had not yet issued a statement recognizing the independence of the Russian bishoprics. Vasilius thought he could control the situation by postponing or ignoring Vladimir's promises, but Vladimir was not someone who could be deceived and left alone in this manner. When the emperor failed to meet Vladimir's demands, he invaded the Byzantine territories in Crimea in the spring of 989. With the capture of this region, control over the patriarchates also passed into the hands of the Russian state. Vladimir could now take over all the bishoprics in Crimea. The situation was clear. The emperor could not accept this. Therefore, reluctantly, he had to allow his sister to marry Vladimir. Having married a woman from the imperial family, Vladimir finally got what he wanted. Continuing to fight against Byzantium would harm him. The main reason he wanted to marry Anna was to establish a significant alliance with the Byzantine administration. The bishops and priests in Crimea had long lived under Christian rule. Having advanced meteorologically, Vladimir, before returning to Kiev, requested religious leaders and religious books from Crimea to lead the people in spreading Christianity in Russian territories. Upon returning to Kiev, Vladimir's first order was for the entire population to be baptized under the leadership of religious leaders at the Dnieper River. He also ordered the destruction of all pagan idols and the construction of new churches in place of the old pagan temples. Messengers carrying similar orders were sent to other cities in Russian territories. Despite many pagan citizens and nobles living in Russian territories, there was no serious problem, except for a minor uprising in Novgorod, which was quickly suppressed. There were several reasons why the pagans did not oppose Vladimir's decision, and there was no religious uprising across the country. Firstly, the revered memory of Vladimir's grandmother, Olga, was effective among the people and nobility. Olga had saved her country from the clutches of civil war after her husband's murder and had protected and raised Russia's greatest warrior, Sviatoslav. Olga, seen as a wise hero, was known to be a Christian. Therefore, the respect for Olga ensured that her grandson Vladimir's words were followed. Another reason was related to the number of Christians in Russian territories. Although paganism was a dominant belief system, there were many Christians among both the people and the nobles. If the pagans resisted this decision, they risked defeat against the Christians, especially when Vladimir was on their side. Furthermore, since Viking warriors sent by Vladimir had been assisting the Byzantine emperor, pagans had significantly weakened. Intimidating Christians with the power of the Vikings had almost depleted the card they had to play. The pagans who had to obey Vladimir's command did not resist Christianization. Vladimir's steps were aimed at approaching the Byzantine Empire and strengthening their international position while ensuring the independence of the Russian Church. Vladimir made Eastern Christianity one of its leading centers in Russia. Even today, it is considered an important focal point for Slavic Orthodox Christianity. The decision Vladimir made centuries ago had permanently changed the history of Russia.